How does a society save itself when it's right on the brink of civil war? For ancient Athens, the answer wasn't some king or a great conqueror. Nope. It was a radical, world-changing idea: democracy. And this is the wild story of how it was all born.
Now, this isn't just some dusty old question from a textbook. For the Athenians, you gotta understand, this was life or death. And their journey to figure it out, it was messy, it was violent, and it was full of surprising turns that ended up completely reshaping the course of human history.
Okay, so our story starts, well, not where you might think. Forget the gleaming Parthenon for a second. We're in the mud and the desperation of 7th century BCE Athens. This was a city on a total knife's edge, split between the super powerful few and the powerless many, and it was just about to explode. So you had these two groups, right? On one side, you've got the Eupatridae, which literally means the well-born. They had it all. I mean, all the land, all the political power. And then you had everyone else, the demos, the common people, and they had nothing. No voice, no power, and they lived under this constant, terrifying threat. And that terrifying threat, it had a name: debt bondage. I mean, just try to picture this for a second. You're a farmer, you have one bad harvest, just one, and boom. You don't just lose your farm to some wealthy aristocrat, you lose your freedom. You, your wife, your kids, you could all be sold into slavery. This wasn't just happening to a few people, it was a crisis that was literally ripping their entire society apart at the seams. So you can see Athens was basically a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And a couple of leaders, seeing this disaster on the horizon, stepped in and tried to defuse the whole thing. Their names were Draco and Solon, and they represent the very first, kind of fragile steps away from total chaos. Okay, so first up was Draco, and what he did sounds so simple, but believe me, it was revolutionary. He just wrote down the laws. For the very first time, justice wasn't just whatever some powerful aristocrat decided it was that day. The laws were tough for sure. I mean, we still use the word draconian today to mean harsh, but they were known. And that set up a huge principle. But, just having laws on the books couldn't fix the massive inequality. And that's where our next guy, Solon, comes in. And Solon's reforms, wow, they were radical for the time. He didn't just tinker with the system, he tried to tear it down and rebuild it. He completely outlawed debt slavery, freeing who knows how many Athenians. He broke the stranglehold of the old noble families by saying, hey, your political rights are based on your wealth, not who your great-granddaddy was. And, this is the big one, he gave every single citizen, even the poorest guy, a seat in the assembly. It was a massive, massive shift. But it was a compromise, and like a lot of compromises, it kind of left nobody totally happy. So Solon's big compromise didn't exactly bring peace. In fact, the fighting continued, and all that conflict created a power vacuum. And guess who stepped into that power vacuum? A whole new kind of leader. Not a reformer, but a tyrant. And he's going to take this story in a direction nobody saw coming. Now, when we hear the word tyrant, we immediately think of someone cruel and oppressive, right? But back in ancient Greece, it just meant someone who took power illegally, unconstitutionally. And that's exactly what this guy, Pisistratus, did. And how did he do it? By positioning himself as a champion for the very same common people the aristocrats had been pushing around for so long. And this is maybe the biggest irony in the entire story. The tyrant, the guy who seized absolute power for himself, is the one who accidentally, totally unintentionally, paves the way for democracy. Think about it. By grabbing all the power, Pisistratus absolutely shattered the influence of those old, powerful aristocratic families. He became the hero of the poor, built up this sense of a unified Athenian identity, and in doing so, created the perfect conditions for the real revolution that was just around the corner. But of course, this kind of rule couldn't last forever. Pisistratus himself might have been popular, but his sons, not so much. After one of them gets assassinated, the other one, Hippias, just descends into this spiral of paranoia and cruelty. So the people of Athens, with a little help from their rivals, the Spartans, finally had enough. They rose up and kicked him out, leaving, you guessed it, another big power vacuum in the city. So, with the tyrant gone, Athens is at another one of these massive crossroads. Are they gonna slide back into the old aristocratic system, or just fall into another civil war? Well, this time, the answer wasn't gonna come from a single reformer or a powerful tyrant. It was gonna come from the people themselves. This power vacuum immediately sets up a huge showdown between two guys. On one side, you have Isagoras. He wants to turn back the clock, bring back the good old days of the aristocracy, and he's even got the Spartan army backing him up.
But his rival, a nobleman named Cleisthenes, does something crazy. He makes a massive gamble. He turns his back on his own rich, powerful class and appeals directly to the demos, to the common people, for support. So when Isagoras and his Spartan buddies try to actually take over the city, something happens that nobody expected. The people of Athens, they don't wait around for a hero. They take matters into their own hands. We're talking a full-on popular revolt. They swarm the streets, they trap Isagoras and the Spartans on the Acropolis, and after a few days, they drive them out of their city for good. This was a real, honest-to-goodness people's revolution.
Cleisthenes comes back to a city that he now owes completely to its people. And he doesn't just make a few changes, he smashes the old system to bits and builds a new one from scratch. And his genius move was this. He got rid of the old family-based tribes that were the source of all the aristocratic power. He created 10 new tribes based on where you lived, not who you were related to, deliberately mixing rich and poor, city folk and farmers. All those old loyalties were just gone. And for the first time, people started to see themselves not as a member of this clan or that family, but as Athenians.
And this whole new system was built on one revolutionary idea, isonomia, equality before the law. Not just in a courtroom somewhere, but in the halls of power. It meant that every single citizen's voice was supposed to matter equally in deciding the future of their city. This was the birth of democratia, rule by the people. It was an absolutely radical, world-changing experiment. But to really get it, we have to ask a pretty tough question. When the Athenians said the people, who were they actually talking about? And the answer, honestly, is pretty shocking to us today. The people in this new Athenian democracy, they were only about 15% of the total population. I mean, think about that. Women, no political rights. Foreigners who lived and worked there, excluded. And a huge chunk of the population was enslaved, with no rights at all. So yeah, it was a democracy, but it was for a very, very small and very exclusive club. And yet, even with these massive, glaring flaws, its legacy is just monumental. For the very first time in recorded history, a state was built on the idea that citizens should rule themselves. And that powerful idea, government by the people, would just echo down through the millennia. It would inspire the Roman Republic, the thinkers of the Enlightenment, and the very world we live in right now. The Athenians figured out their answer for who the people were. But their story, I think, leaves us with a real challenge. Today, more than 2,000 years later, as we deal with our own deep divisions and inequalities, we have to keep asking ourselves that same fundamental question: who are the people? And what does it really mean to build a government for them?